Kia ora, talofa lava, and a warm welcome to another episode of the COUNTER RUCK, a podcast where we discuss all things rugby. I'm the host of the COUNTER RUCK, Stacey, and today we welcome a stalwart of Ponsonby and the grassroots game, Big Joey Nanai. How's it going, brother?
Hey, brother. Thank you, and we appreciate you from here in the city of the future.
Yep, got to get that in there early. We will probably spend a lot of the podcast talking about the city of the future, seeing how well they've gone in recent weeks. But before we do get into it, I'll just take care of our normal housekeeping stuff. So our website, check us out, www.weswesnet.com, and also you can follow the COUNTER RUCK on Twitter and Facebook. So give us a follow and give us a like through that. Right, Joey, we've got a bit to get through. So there were some interesting developments to come out in regards to Moana Pasifika bid, which we didn't really touch on last week. We didn't have a podcast last week, so we can delve into that a bit. And some stuff for our TAB account as well, which we'll do, and some reviews. But I know Roger was keen to jump on just so he can gloat about his Chiefs. So we might as well start talking about them before he jumps on the podcast midway through like he normally does. They've basically come from nowhere to get into the Super Rugby Aotearoa final. And we'll start with that game actually on Friday night. So the Chiefs, they left it quite late to beat the Hurricanes. 26-24 was the final score there. So I know that's your neck of the woods there, the city of the future. So did you catch the game, and what did you make of the Chiefs in that game as well?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I caught a little bit of the game. It was actually the end of the game that I caught, where the Chiefs were triumphant. Yeah, it was nice to see from a resident of Chiefs country, and having a family member playing for the Chiefs, young Etienne Nanai Seturo. It was nice to see the Chiefs turn their season around the way they have the last couple of weeks. They had a few key losses during the season. They were able to capitalise, I think is the good word for the Chiefs, especially when they had games like the Golden Point game where they seemed to bring it out the bag, even during a bad performance. I think there are a few telling stats that tell the story about the Chiefs' season. And one telling fact is defense. So tackles won, Chiefs have landed with 86.5, which is the top of the 5 franchises in terms of tackles won. They have the best discipline in that when it came to things like penalties or yellow cards, they were the lowest number with only 1 yellow card, compared to Hurricanes, who were on top with 7 with their ill discipline.
Wow.
So that tells a little bit of a story, doesn't it, about how the Chiefs were able to get to where they are now, where they've landed themselves in the final with a game to go against the Blues with the dead rubber match. Is that at Eden Park or is that here at Waikato?
No, up here at Eden Park. So we'll talk about the frustrations of the Blues as well. But if they could have picked up a bonus point in that other game, then it would all be on with a sort of almost a winner-take-all for a final. But it wasn't to be. Just on the Chiefs, those are some quite telling stats. So, you don't want to beat yourself. So if you can keep all 15 guys on the field, it goes a long way towards winning. So that discipline in terms of the cards and just making your tackles and that goes a long way. Rugby's not as a simple game which can be overcomplicated through analysis and overcoaching and all that sort of stuff. If you make your tackles and you keep your discipline, those fundamentals of the game, it takes you a long way. So it's quite interesting when you talk about the Canes, who are at the bottom, and they've got the worst record in regards to cards. So I think that's also shows how important that part of the game is. So good stats there, Joey. Just one thing I wanted to say, D-Mac, he came up clutch again. He got that penalty very late. He kicked. You talked about that Golden Point win. He was the one who slotted that field goal, I think. So he's the man in the last sort of 5-10 minutes. He's really coming up big for the Chiefs. And in their winning streak, they haven't blown teams off the park. They've been getting 1 point, 2 point, 3 point wins. And it's just him coming through really good for them in the last couple of minutes. So that fullback race, we talked about that in our last podcast a couple of weeks ago for the All Black fullback job. And a lot of guys putting their hand up. D-Mac was good. I thought Jordy Barrett was one of the best players for the Hurricanes in their loss. And, Will Jordan as well, who we'll probably touch on a bit with the Blues, was also very good as well, so with the Blues Crusaders game. But yeah, congrats to the Chiefs. Anyone who follows our podcast will know that we put $10 on the Chiefs to win the tournament at the start of the season, which at the time I thought was ludicrous, and now it looks like might be a very distinct possibility. And maybe I shouldn't have put the bet on straight away. I think they lost their opening couple of games, so the odds would have blown out even more. But as it was 9-1 when we put our $10 on, so that's looking like a good moneymaker at this point anyway. So, mate, Joe, you got anything else you want to add about the Chiefs in your neck of the woods? It's good with Joey, with Roger not here, to soak up the whole segment and gloat about his team. But yeah, anything else you wanted to add, brother?
Yeah, just one more thing. There is an interesting stat here in that the top two teams for defenders beaten were Crusaders and Chiefs. And I think that is telling of the Super Rugby Aotearoa season, that the more defenders beaten in crucial moments of the game, and when you have possession and territory, I think that can work in your favour. And then if you look at meters carried, the Blues were actually in the top two with the Crusaders for meters carried. So, but when you look at the defenders beaten for the Blues, they were the lowest number. They were at 5th of all 5 franchises. So, again, it shows that even though Blues were up there in terms of meters carried, it actually matters when you how many defenders you're actually beating. And, on your way to the try line, that's quite telling of, whether you're going to get tries or penalties or not. Unfortunately for the Blues, there's something wrong there. There's something very wrong compared to the Chiefs. And, I think that's a combination of discipline and finishing ability. Yeah,
that's really painting a picture. Now it's good to hear now we're effectively coming towards the end of Super Rugby Aotearoa and you get a bit of a bigger sample size. So we will actually touch on that game. So the Crusaders on Sunday, they gave the Blues a good old-fashioned beating, 29 points to 6 it was. I know the Blues ran for about 100 more meters than the Crusaders in that game, which comes back to what you said about how many running meters and stuff the Blues are doing. But it amounted to nothing. They couldn't get over the try line, which is where it matters. And yeah, it wasn't a lot of clean breaks or anything. That was still a lot of rumbling through. So I'm not sure if you caught that game, but did you make anything of that Crusaders Blues?
I didn't catch the main game. I caught some highlights, but the Blues were quite woeful in the highlights that I saw. They weren't winning set pieces. They were getting dominated all over the park. And, it just seemed like they didn't have any leadership to steer them in the right direction when there were moments that they were, against the wall, backs against the wall. So I think, it's down to things like culture. It's down to things like when the going gets tough, who's going to lead the way by example rather than just words. So there are a few key players that I think can influence a game when it comes to positions. And I think, captains can't do it on their own.
Yeah, it's interesting that when they lost, you talked about the leadership, and I agree with that. Patrick Tuipulotu went down. I'm not sure what happened to TJ Whaiane. because he seemed the next logical choice. And then Tom Robinson had a concussion. TJ seemed the next logical choice. He wasn't there. They went for the co-captains of Dalton Papali'i and Rico Ioane. And you talk about leadership. I thought Rico had one of his worst games. So the captaincy didn't really sit that well with him. And Dalton got called out from the referee. He was basically going up to him every minute or so and trying to complain about something. So then the referee just took to him and said, "Hey, look, I can't have you coming up to me every stoppage and play trying to talk to me about something." So I think there was that lack of leadership. I think that's a good way of describing a lot of the Blues issues. But the Crusaders really put them to the sword. They ran for over 100 meters, like more than the Crusaders, like I said. So they were doing some things would look like they were going right. I'm not sure if it's the game plan or what, but they were thoroughly outplayed. I will say, one thing I will say, they went for two open sides. So Papali'i and Blake Gibson both played in tandem, and that at least worked. So I'll give McDonald some credit for that. And the Crusaders, they've struggled, or they put the Blues to the sword, but in the last couple of weeks, they've been really struggling to win games. They lost to the Chiefs. They went to Golden Point against the Hurricanes, and then they lost to the Highlanders as well. And it's that breakdown area that's the critical part. So I think McDonald saw that, which is why he went for 2 sevens. And I'll say that was one positive that came out. That part they went right, and that's a vulnerability and a fallibility in the Crusaders' juggernaut, is that their breakdown, a lot of their plays are based around quick recycle, and if you can slow their breakdown ball, then you can stifle a lot of what they do, even though the Blues couldn't do that.
Yep. It was quite disappointing to see that, the Blues have really not done well in their scrummaging. They're actually, when it comes to scrums, they're way down the list, at the bottom of the list, actually, when it comes to scrums 1 versus the Chiefs, who are the top of the list. So there's a factor there that they could use for this coming week against the Blues to, get one up on them. Because when you win it's the old adage, you win up front, you set yourself up for winning the game.
Yeah. When we did our season preview, I obviously am a Blues fan, and I talked up the Blues a lot, and I waxed lyrical about the 4 All Black props that we had, and I thought this is going to be a difference maker. You're starting 2 All Black props, they sub off, and you bring 2 more All Black props on, and I thought we were going to just kill everyone's scrum and dominate that set piece, but that never unfolded. And it just went downhill not long after that, so for the Blues. So, yeah, I agree with you. That was one of the most disappointing parts of the Blues season, even though there's still a game to go, so we shouldn't be... Maybe we could save the eulogy for next week on the Blues, but I think, now that they're out of the final, I sort of feel like what went wrong, and I looked at that. That's not one thing I would have picked, that the 4 All Black props wouldn't be dominating that part of the game, so... That was a shock, I'll say.
I don't know. I mean, if you were the Blues coaching staff, what would you do for this last game being a dead rubber match? Will you look with an eye to the future with blooding new players, or giving game time to players that haven't had much game time this season, bringing in developing players? What would you do? That's the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just looking at the standings. No. Well, I suppose if they lose, we could finish drop down potentially from 3rd to 4th to 2nd to last. I don't know. Does that matter in the grand scheme of things? And also, like, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. So just as a fan, it would be good to see them get a win, especially with the Trans-Tasman coming up. They might want to try to get some confidence ahead of that. But yeah, that's a good question. Not sure. I have no idea. I think McDonald doesn't know the answers either, because the teams he's picking haven't really been doing the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, disappointing times. Mate, I'll get your opinion, because this is probably a bit more something that you would be a bit more of an expert than I am. But we'll look at some of this Moana Pasifika stuff. So, Kevin Senior, sort of a good friend of both of ours and a good friend of the pod. So he was on the breakdown, I think, last week, and he's the new general manager, I think, of Moana Pasifika, and he outlined a couple of key points. So, some of those key points, the team's going to be based out of South Auckland and play primarily out of Mount Smart. I'm just reading this off the page. The squad will have no more than 20% non-Pacific Island eligible players. The other 80% are Pacific Island declared or neutral, and players will be contracted to Moana Pasifika and not the New Zealand Rugby Union. So, what did you make of any of those new developments of what Kevy had to say? Did you make much of that?
Look, I think in the larger scheme of things, there shouldn't be any surprises by any parties who follow Moana Pasifika or any parties who are pro-New Zealand rugby. The 20% thing, I'm of the stance that, of course, there was going to be something like a 20% thing because New Zealand rugby was so involved with, the selection, the whole positioning of Moana Pasifika. So, of course, they'll have, for lack of a better word, an agenda like 20% that they can, grab from. To be honest, this has the makings of a shit show, and that's got nothing to do, that comment has nothing to do with Moana Pasifika. It's more along the how Moana Pasifika came to be, given the influence of New Zealand rugby and its counterparts, and people that are involved with New Zealand rugby as an organisation. I can see accusations of stealing players going both ways, given how many of the Tonga and Samoan national team are New Zealand born. The Blues player and fan base could be stripped out of making both teams unsustainable. So, for me, as a rugby fan, and a Polynesian rugby fan, a Pasifika rugby fan, I'm all for, the rugby that Moana Pasifika is going to bring. However, I'm of the same notion of Ken Laban, who I watched on that same show that Kevy was on. Ken had a concern that he indicated, which was we have players who were selected for Super Rugby Aotearoa this season who could have, if they wanted to, make themselves available for Moana Pasifika, but have been hamstrung because they've been selected in teams like the Hurricanes. For instance, just as an example, you've got Asafo Aumua, who is a decent hooker, and he would probably start for Moana Pasifika if he wanted to play for them. He's been hamstrung because Dane Coles has now re-signed with Hurricanes in New Zealand Rugby. So that kind of leaves him stuck in limbo. There's also the talent that is Vaya Fifita, who comes from the same team, same region. He's been hamstrung as well. He's in nowhere land at the moment. He can't even put his hand up if he wanted to play for Moana Pasifika. So there's players like that who Moana Pasifika just simply can't choose from if they wanted to, but should have access to, in my eyes anyway, as a fan. I think they should have access to these types of players, but, there are a lot of roadblocks that hold them back from being selected. That's my take on it anyway.
Yeah, no, a lot good points there. I'm curious, where the players are going to come from for the reasons you mentioned as well, because the team wants to be competitive as well. You don't want to come in and there's the Sunwolves and they're getting smashed every week, or some of these other startup teams. The Rebels were getting creamed for a while, and so were the Force. And we saw the Force ended up. This is Ken Laban's point again. Super Rugby sort of had enough of the Force getting wasted every week, so they weren't prepared to hang around with them, and then they got kicked out for a bit. And same as the Sunwolves, that sort of they were getting smoked by 50, and then they don't want to hang around with them anymore. So if Moana Pasifika has to come in and be competitive, it's the Olmores and the Fafitas and these types of players who will be valuable to them, who aren't getting big game time. So yeah, I'm curious who they're going to get. The way they said the other 80%, so it's Pacific Island declared or neutral. So I think that's another way of getting more guys in. So that's guys like, say, like TJ Faiani, for instance, is a good example of someone who falls in that neutral category. Or he could be eligible for Pacific Islander stuff. They were to grab someone like him. But if he carved up, then the All Blacks would take him anyway, even though he'd probably fall in that 80%. So I do think that the fact that they've added the PI declared or neutral sort of gives them another way of bending the rules to get a couple more guys in. The New Zealand Rugby guys, New Zealand Rugby Union, I'm talking about. Yeah, but a lot there. I mean, I'll just go to a couple of just questions. I'm just going to fire off, so probably can spring them on you. But have you got any thoughts or any preferences to a coach for Moana Pasifika? I was talking about it briefly with Cams, but I think maybe they might try to. Well, I assume they're promoting Pasifika players. So I wonder if there might be an opportunity to promote Pacific coaches as well. Does anyone come to mind for you for that? Because they haven't named a coach as of yet.
Yeah, look, immediately I want the best for a team like Moana Pasifika, and it's a daunting task for Kevin Senil to have to go ahead and find the right talent for coaching and playing. What initially came to mind for me was the question: is Aaron Major available? That was the very first question I asked. Is Aaron Major available? Because he would be a guy who, he's of Pasifika heritage, which ticks that box. He's got the rugby nous. He's definitely got some coaching experience behind him at Super Rugby level. So why wouldn't he be considered for that kind of role? But if you want to go next level up, former international coaches, who's available? First and foremost, I mean, I would have thought about guys like Pat Lam as well.
Oh, yes.
Throwing Pat Lam a line, seeing where his availabilities and loyalties and contractual priorities are. So, yeah, guys like that come to mind straight away.
Oh, nice. I didn't think of Pat Lam, but yeah, if they could get him, that would be a massive coup. So I was thinking, well, I suppose Filo Tiatia is looking for a job these days. He resigned not long ago. But yeah, guys like Tana Umanga's had a bit of a coaching experience. Alama Yeremia is another guy. So yeah, I think there are a few options there. But just in terms, like if we try and put ourselves in Kiwi's shoes, because I think you made a good point that that's going to be a tough part, getting the players and all the rest of it. But who do you think, is anyone that comes to mind that you thought they should try to recruit? Like someone who's a Samoan international or a Tongan international, or anyone that you thought, oh, this is the ideal person that they could try to, start to build a team around? Anyone come to mind for you for that?
In terms of a player or a coach?
Yeah, like a player, because I suppose where I was thinking is, like, I'm not sure where the players are going to come from. I don't want them to just get the leftovers of ITM Cup and these types of things. I want them to at least try to get some top quality players. And if they're going for Samoan and Tongan internationals as part of the 80%, I was just trying to think, is there anyone you could think of off the top of your head that you think might be a good recruit?
I've just
seen, living in, not, let's just say they could get them, but not necessarily that they will, but anyone comes to mind for you?
That's a tough one, actually. I mean, who has a contract? Who doesn't have a contract? Abroad or over here in New Zealand? That's my immediate question. And who has a few more years ahead of them? I see our finalist Roger has joined.
Oh gosh. Roger, mate, thanks for jumping on halfway through again.
Your internet's working now over there?
Yeah, I might have to put him on mute with his name finalist on our team podcast. Oh, yeah, I'm just on the players. The guy that I really wanted them to get was Michael Alatoa, who's
Yeah.
the Crusaders prop and Manu Samoa international. But I think he's already signed, like you said. We're going to talk about contracts. Like, he won't be at the Crusaders next year. I think he signed to play somewhere in Europe, somewhere good. And I also think maybe, I don't know, he might be a bit older now, but maybe Tim Nanai Williams. He's a guy who's got Super Rugby, and he's been an excellent Super Rugby player. So he's someone who could come here, and he's from South Auckland too. So he could someone who could come in and maybe be a good guy if they could get someone along those lines. But I mean, yeah, that's probably my biggest concern. They need to get some sponsorship deals, which we don't know about. Then find some corporate money as part of it, and the players. That's what's going to boil down to. Where are they going to get these players from? Because they're going for next year, so they need to really pull finger and get some stuff happening pretty quickly. Contracts need to be signed and sorted, and they need to basically build a full squad from scratch. So,
I think as a selector of the Australian and the New Zealand rugby franchises, I would be wary, just like Patrick Tuipulotu was interviewed recently. I would be worried that certain fringe players from my franchise who may be coming off contract or on a temporary contract may have an eye for Moana Pasifika. I'd be worried. And why not? If you're a fringe player playing for the Blues, Chiefs, Hurricanes, Crusaders, or Highlanders, why not look at Moana Pasifika? If you've got, some kind of ties to that, go for
it. Yeah, absolutely. I would have loved them to get Whakatawa as well. Like, he seems someone who could really have fit the bill. He's already signed for the Highlanders as well. But, I suppose, he's committed to the Highlanders for another couple of years. So, I have no idea. I think they should have announced someone by now. Like, I mean, holy crap, they haven't announced anyone. They need a full 35, 36-man squad.
I suppose in a way, the Fijian Drua team and the Moana Pasifika team, they both allow these players who are contracted to franchises in Aotearoa and Australia to cement their contracts for the next time round. Because they'll be more than likely offered to stay on.
Yeah.
Because of the threat that they now have, or the extra options they now have of going to, if you're Fijian, go to Fijian Drua or Moana Pasifika. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And in that way, I think it could be sort of that sixth New Zealand team for those reasons you mentioned. Like, if you're a fringe guy, if you were a fringe sort of guy and you were sort of guaranteed, had a better chance of getting a start with Moana Pasifika, you carve up, and then, the All Blacks come knocking. And in that ways, these neutral guys that they keep talking about will end up being swayed to the All Blacks. So, I don't know. I don't know about this anymore. I'll support them. I will say I'll support them, and I will give them credit, because 25 years we haven't even had a team. We've had nothing. So this is, I don't think this is the perfect solution. I think there were potentially better solutions, but this is the team we got. So, you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and this is a good solution, which is better than nothing.
I suppose the overarching question is, with Moana Pasifika, you've got Tonga, you've got Samoa. But how are they actually benefiting outside of having players come and play for Moana Pasifika? That's the question. It needs answers.
Well, I think, I'm just living in this perfect world here. The fact that the players will be exposed to a higher level of competition week in, week out. So I know that Kevy talked about he was trying to build some strong relationships and some strong ties with the Tongan under-20s development program and the Samoan equivalent. So the theory being that they can get these young under-20s guys help to develop them through the Moana Pasifika program, and they'll go on and be professional Super Rugby players, and in theory from there, professional Manu Samoa players.
All well and good intentions. Intentions are lovely. Intentions are lovely, but like hope, not a good sustainable strategy. I think, the proof's in the pudding, so it's all yet to be seen. I think we can judge after the first season, which is after next season, 2022. That's when we'll be able to sit back and go, okay, that was either a good first season or no. It's not looking good.
Mm-hmm. Roger, are you there, or are you just waiting for your team, the Chiefs, so you can jump in? Nope, I think we might have lost him partially there, Rog. But mate, I wanted to talk about. I don't know if you can touch too much on this, but I watched some of those videos. Tracy Atingo was the head of the Kanaloa bid, the failed bid, unfortunately. She uploaded a couple of videos with some quite damning footage and quotes from. I think it was Rob Nichol, who's the head of the New Zealand Rugby Players Association, and Brent Impey, who was the chairman of New Zealand Rugby. And it looks like they were speaking from a place of quite strong self-interest, which you'd expect from them. I don't think they'd be so candid as to say it like that, but mate, what did you make of anything of that? So just, I think that can't really recall, but I think Rob Nichol was, a lot of the questions was why was he involved? Like, I mean, he's the head of New Zealand Rugby Players Association, and he's really, his job is to look after New Zealand rugby players, not really to help out Pacific players or Moana Pasifika, and he got called out for that. And that guy, Brent Impey, he was basically saying, hey, look, this Moana Pasifika bid is the best bid for New Zealand rugby, and he was pretty open, quite candid about that. So what did you make of any of those messages that came through on Facebook? If you haven't seen it, any of the listeners out there, check it out. It's quite interesting fodder for anyone who's following the two bids that were part of the Super Rugby plans going forward.
Yeah, well, it's it's kind of majorly dramatic, but at the same time, it's like, ooh, what's happening next? It's kind of an eerie feeling when you're watching those two clips that you just mentioned, and there's a few others, I believe, but yeah, my take on it is she could get in trouble for it, but I know that she's the kind of person who wouldn't give a damn as long as the truth comes to light. But at the same time, it was quite telling listening to some of the things that Brent Impey and Rob Nichol both said. I think the longer interview or the longer video was the first one with Rob Nichol, but that short one with Brent Impey, mate,
he was just straight up the nuts. He just didn't even try and hide his intentions.
No, he didn't try and hide it at all. And look, all I heard from it, I thought, you know what? Okay, that makes sense. That actually makes sense if you're looking at it from the lenses of New Zealand rugby. They have to protect their brand. They absolutely have to protect their brand. And at least Brent Impey, for all his failings, he's honest about protecting the brand. And it's not surprising to hear what he said. From a business point of view, yeah, I can totally understand his stance that he would want to keep certain organizations or certain parties from getting the nod over others, because one ticks boxes and the other doesn't for New Zealand rugby's existence, or New Zealand rugby's exposure and brand. So yeah, it's all about protection, isn't it? It's about protection of position. It's all about being able to leverage off certain individuals and certain organizations, namely the obvious ones. but also he implicated that there are a few contacts within the Pasifika community that, that they have leveraged or intentions to leverage. So make of that what you will if you're listening to this podcast. But yeah, that's some damning info.
Yeah, I was surprised. I'll be honest, because I thought, even though that's obvious what's happening, and that's what they're doing behind closed doors, I thought it was just that they'd just pay the lip service and say, hey, look, we're here to support bloody Polynesian rugby and all the rest of it. So I was quite surprised at his candidness about what he had to say. I thought he'd be a bit more, you play the game and you say the right things that you're supposed to say, even though deep down you have your ulterior motives. You just don't normally say them out loud like that. So I thought that was interesting anyway.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I'd read a few tweets and a few posts online by Pacific Rugby Welfare, who are taking an objective approach. They're not taking sides on any of the matters, but they are calling out things that they don't see are fair. One thing that was indicated or was highlighted by Pacific Rugby Welfare was up to 20% of Moana squad to be New Zealand eligible. So that's 8 players eligible for the ABs.
Right.
And currently, New Zealand super sides only allow 2 players who aren't AB qualified. So this, if you look at it from the outside in, it hardly represents, the notion of flicking model on its head. So exactly what are World Rugby funding? These are questions that come to mind. So I agree with Pacific Rugby Welfare's stance on this. They're just highlighting what they see to be conflicts of interest, unfairness, unjustified decisions.
Yeah. So just on that, for our listeners, World Rugby, they've put $1.3 million into Moana Pasifika for the year. I think just for this year. I'm not sure how many years that's going to be for. And I think what the New Zealand Rugby Union are doing, so they help to give them a share of the TV rights deal. So they're going to get $2.5 million out of that. But you're right. So they have a 38-man squad, and 30 will be fall in that 80%. So 30 of that 38-man squad will be, Pacific Island declared or neutral, and then 8 will be All Black eligible guys. But yeah, because it's PI declared and neutral, it's going to be more than 8, because if they get those guys who will have the dual eligibility, if the All Blacks come knocking and they play good, then it's going to turn into 9, 10, 11 guys, So it's going to be interesting developments anyway, and we'll keep following it.
Yep.
But I'll say that's probably my second team. That's going to be my new second team. You don't normally have second teams, but I'm going to have one. So
who's currently your second team?
I like the Chiefs, but I don't like their supporters like Roger and I. They gloat too much when they win. But they're a good team to watch. It's just I just can't handle the gloating from the fans.
Yeah. Especially when they write as their name is finalist.
Yeah. So Rogers, he's with us. He's having a few technical difficulties. So we'll move forward on from the Moana Pasifika. Unless you got some last words on that before we move forward, Joey?
Oh, no, mate. It's just when things like this are put together, I always question what contribution do these organisations have to the nations they represent, like Samoa and Tonga in this instance. What does Samoa and Tonga gain from a rugby perspective from an organisation like Moana Pasifika? Hopefully I'll catch up with Kevin Senior soon, and we'll get some answers on that.
Yeah, because I think especially if they end up with recruiting people who are already played for the Manu, played for Tonga. They're not really offering that much because they're already professional players anyway, whatever, and they're not adding more players. So it's going to be if they can develop guys, and those guys go on to play for the Manu after that. That's going to be where the most value will be, hopefully in the future, which is part of their plan if it comes to fruition. But we'll move on. I'll just give for our listeners a quick update on our Wes medal. So just for anyone who's not sure, we have a Wes medal, which is named after our network for the Super Rugby Player of the Year. So we review each game and we allocate 3 points to the best player, 2 for the second best player, and 1 for the third best player for that game, and then tally up all the points at the end of the season to get a winner of the prestigious Wes medal as our Player of the Year. So just over the weekend, mate, we have a new leader. So after 9 weeks, Cody Taylor was in the lead. For the first 9 weeks of Super Rugby, he was at the top. And he's finally been overtaken by the great Damian McKenzie. So D-Mac is on 11 points now after another outstanding performance over the weekend, which pushes Cody Taylor down to second on 9 points. And Rob Valentini, who's another guy who's come strong late from the Brumbies, he's third. On 7 points there. There's a whole host of guys on 6 and 5 who are sort of, I suppose, still in the running because we are going to include the Trans-Tasman in this. But that's our top 3 as it stands now. Check out our social media pages as well so you can keep updated on that. But we'll just move forward, Joey, to our the weekend's games and our TAB account. So we'll get some predictions on some games and a tip for you for our account. So on Friday, Dead Rubber, Hurricanes versus Highlanders, so that's 4th versus 5th. Battle of the Wooden Spoon. Are you even going to watch? Any thoughts on that one Friday night down in Wellington?
Oh, how would you feel being the Highlanders having to go up to Wellington and play in a dead rubber match for no placing?
Yep.
For no top 3 placing anyway, but look, it's sad situation for those two teams to be in, but at the same time, they will want to come away with it to secure their contracts for next season as individual players. But also, they will want to come away with a win to, the Highlanders to take back to their franchise, and the Hurricanes to, I guess, give their coaching staff and fans something to smile about, because the Hurricane season, let's be honest, has been woeful at best.
Yeah, not much. So I probably still watch it just because there's not much games that you can afford to miss them. So Hurricanes, Highlanders. I think the Hurricanes. Now we talked about the demise of the Blues, and I know Cam's mentioned this to some of the guys in our chat, and even on social media. Like the 9 and 10 at the Blues are really struggling. And if I look at this Hurricanes team, they're in a very similar boat. So Jackson Garden Bishop they had, who I think got injured. They've got this new 19-year-old kid, Ruben Love, who looks promising, but it's a big ask for a 19-year-old to play first 5 at this level and steer the ship. And they've had a couple of halfbacks there. So TJ Perinara's gone, and the backup guy Booth, he was out injured for a big chunk of it, or most of it, all of it so far. So that 9-10 axis has been weak for the Hurricanes, and that's sort of why they're drowning at the bottom. And the Blues have slipped down the table since their 9 and 10 have really struggled as well. So real critical in the decision making and getting your team around the park, those positions. So I think there's both of those two teams have faltered on the back of those two positions. But I think, I don't know, maybe I'll flip the coin. I think the Highlanders have been better all season, so I'll give them a shout for that one. But we'll look Saturday night, a game which should have been a final showdown for a place in the final, but it's not to be. The Blues are playing the Chiefs on Saturday night, which is another dead rubber, unfortunately. So, mate, any thoughts on that one? Are you leaning any way towards that one?
Oh, mate, look, it's a tough one, but I'd have to give it to the Blues based on they need to beat the Chiefs to back up their last win against the Chiefs, but they also need to bring some pride back to the region. They also need to, because it's a home game, you would expect, okay, home fans don't want to really pay for a dead rubber match, but they will because it's against the neighbours, the Chiefs, and they'll get a good quality rugby game. I think also the Blues, being that it was the Super Rugby Aotearoa season before the introduction of Moana Pasifika and Fijian draw, they really needed to make a mark on this season, and they've failed. They've fallen at that hurdle, and the risk there is that they will lose a lot of their fan base to Moana Pasifika.
Good point.
Because now, guess what? Moana Pasifika is setting up in Auckland in their backyard and are going to take their fans, well, the Polynesian ones anyway, the Pasifika fans that have been loyal to Auckland Blues all these years, have had or found some sense of cultural identity with Auckland Blues. Now that there's the option to go with a Moana Pasifika and support them, the fan base is going to be split. Well, the Pasifika fan base anyway. So this was the season that the Blues really needed to make their mark, and unfortunately they've fallen at that hurdle. And I think Moana Pasifika have only got to gain from that. As far as the Blues versus Chiefs go, I want the Blues to win. I'm not sure if they will, but I think they need to get that up on them to, I suppose, get some momentum for next season.
Yep.
But also, I think if I was the Chiefs, I would want to beat the Blues to get some momentum going into the final. The Chiefs most certainly have the team to do it. They've turned their season around from 0-12 to now look, they're finalists. Who's got the last laugh, right? So, the Blues unfortunately have let their loyal fans like us down, and I think they are at risk of losing a whole lot more.
Yeah, good. I like that. That's a really good take. I thought the Blues have got a chance. I think a lot's going to depend on how the Chiefs approach this. So if they rest like Damian McKenzie and these other guys because they've got one sort of eye on the final, then the Blues should win. But I think if the Chiefs play their best team, I think they've got too much for the Blues, even at Eden Park. Just as a fan of the Blues, I would like to see them have something to cheer about and some momentum, I suppose, to lead into the Trans-Tasman section. But they've lost 4 of their last 5, and you brought up some quite telling stats early on in the podcast, which kind of reveal why. So I don't know if they can turn a lot of that around in the 5 or 6 days since that Crusaders game. It doesn't look like there's going to be a quick fix to any of those things. It's not just one issue as well, like you brought up. There's a few things going on in both defence and attack. So I will say they've got 3 All Black props left. Come on, show why you're All Black props and own the set piece. Kill that Chiefs scrum. You should be running through these guys. So that's one thing I will hope to see. This is another toss of the coin, and I'm really interested to see how the Chiefs approach it. But I'll go for the hometown advantage on this one and give the Blues a shout. One more game of interest, which we don't normally touch much on the Australian stuff, but they've got they do the top 3. So they've got the semi-finals of the Australians this week, which is the Brumbies at home finishing second against the Force who finished third. So the Reds at top of the table, they get a bye, and they'll play the winner of this game next week in the final. So any thoughts on the semi-final? Just because it's a semi, we thought we'll give it a bit of a look.
So who the Brumbies got?
The Brumbies playing the Force in Brumby territory, which was that Canberra, ACT.
Because I haven't seen too much of the Aussie Super Rugby, I'll go with whoever the hometown team is. Whoever the home team is, I'll go with them. Hometown advantage. Because Aussie haven't seen too much from a fan perspective games. So the home teams will definitely be getting out there and supporting their home team, which will sway the numbers their way in terms of the support. I think that really helps.
Yep. It's sort of turned out similar to the New Zealand conference where it looks like there is a top two and then a third. So the Brumbies and the Brumbies and the Reds are the top two teams over there, and there's sort of a bit of a drop to third place at the Force, who sort of snuck in. They caused an upset win over the Reds, and then they've snuck in over the Rebels. So congrats to the Force. You know, they were discarded from Super Rugby, and for them to make the playoffs, you know, that's a good job for them and their fans. But I'm with you. I think the Brumbies will be too strong. So yeah, we look to be on the same page in a lot of these. But mate, we've got our TAB account. So I'm just having a look here. We've got $155 in there. So we're still winning. Mate, have you got a tip for us? Have you got a tip for us on any of those three games, or a multi or whatever? We'll chuck our $10 on and try and win a whole heap back.
Mate, I'm always high risk, high reward. And I do believe I got the one where the Chiefs got the win over the Crusaders, right?
Yes. That was good all there. So that upset there got us up a bit more.
I never thought I'd say this season, but I think the upset of the Blues over the Chiefs is going to happen.
Nice. Well, we'll just keep putting in our money and we'll keep getting it back. So
I never thought I'd call that an upset, especially given the Blues beat them last time they met.
Yeah, I'll have to check the odds there, but yeah, I'm pretty sure the Chiefs, given their current form, and D-Mac in the clutch, mate, he has been clutch right through. So it'll be interesting to see the team selections, as you say. But yeah, mate, we're just about to wrap up our podcast for the week. So putting $10 on the Blues to beat the Chiefs. But mate, just get some final thoughts, just on anything really. In closing.
Yep, just if you're a fan of rugby, always question the intentions of the controlling organisations, especially when they represent your home nation. That's all I'm going to say.
Nice, I like it, nice and succinct, yeah. But you're right, 100% right. I suppose what I'll say, Blues, mate, get your act together. It's hard work being a fan. I'm not sure if it was Chris Ratchew or someone, but there was an article floating around that this is the most disappointing season ever for the Blues. I know I don't have Herald Premiums, I wasn't able to read the gist of what he was saying, but I will say, as a fan with high expectations this year, given what they've produced last year, it seems like we've gone backwards. So, mate, come on, Blues. And yeah, just on Moana Pasifika, which we talked about as well, you know, just happy that they've got it off the ground. It's been a long time coming for Polynesian rugby to get their own professional team. It's 25 years into Super Rugby, and we've had nothing despite knocking on the door for so long. But I think, like Ken Laban, he talked about this as well, that the Sunwolves couldn't get it together fast enough, and then they ended up getting kicked out, and the Force weren't competitive early, and then they got kicked out. So I'm hoping that the powers that be will stick with Moana Pasifika, because I think it's going to take them a few years to get established and to get off the ground. I don't think they're going to be competitive straight away, particularly with that 80-20 rule. I think that's going to hamstring them early on in terms of getting a competitive side on the field. So, I'm a Blues guy. I'll always be a Blues guy for life. But like I said, I'll have a second team of Moana Pasifika and I'll support them. And for the sake of Polynesian rugby, I do hope it works. I really, really hope it works well, because I think if it does, it'll be good for world rugby. If the Polynesians, the Polynesians in world rugby are killing it for every team except for the Polynesian teams. They seem to be ripping up for everyone else, and it seems like the home nations of their heritage seem to get the scraps of their own players, which is unfortunate. So hopefully they can turn that around, with this Moana Pasifika being a big part of that. But yeah, mate, Joey, mate, you got anything else you want to say before that's about us?
Oh, just one on behalf of Roger, who couldn't join us tonight. Go the Blues.
Yep, I know that's why he came on. He wanted to say that, so I'm glad you said that on his behalf. Nice, brother. But yeah, I just want to thank all our listeners for joining us for another episode of the Counter Ruck. We're available through our usual podcast platforms, so Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, Google. There's a couple more which I can't remember. iHeartRadio, and now our YouTube as well. We've got our YouTube channel, our network YouTube channel up, so you can watch us on there. Just want to thank everyone for jumping on and being providing a lot of extensive knowledge. So Joey, mate, thanks for jumping on as always. Rog, thanks for being a silent partner throughout the podcast, and Cameron for doing the fact checking. That's us, boys. We'll be back again next week. Cheers, boys.